Welcome to Africa Untold, the place where hidden truths rise again, where voices buried in silence are heard, and where the world learns that Africa's story was never just about slavery, colonization, or suffering. It was about kings, empires, scholars, and unthinkable wealth. You've heard about Mansa Musa, the richest man who ever lived. But today, we go further, because Mansa Musa was not alone. Across the deserts, forests, and rivers of Africa, other kings ruled with unimaginable power and fortune. They commanded trade routes that stretched beyond the horizon. They built cities of gold and stone. They forged empires that made Europe tremble, yet their names were erased from history books. And today, we bring them back to life. This is the untold story of Africa's other forgotten kings of wealth. Before we go beyond him, let us remember who Mansa Musa was. In the 14th century, he ruled the Mali Empire, and his wealth shook the entire world. His famous pilgrimage to Mecca, where he gave away so much gold that it destabilized economies, still echoes in history. But here is the truth. When we talk about Africa's wealth, the world only gives us one name, Mansa Musa, as if the entire continent's riches belonged to him alone. This is deliberate, because to admit that there were many rulers like him, or even greater in other ways, would mean rewriting world history. So, let us travel across Africa and meet the king's history erased. Long before Mansa Musa, Mali had another legend. His name was Sundiata Keita, and in the hearts of his people, he was remembered as the Lion King. Sundiata's story doesn't begin with power, it begins with pain. He was born disabled. His legs were weak, and many mocked him, whispering that he would never walk, let alone rule. Even his enemies laughed at the thought of him leading a kingdom. But destiny had other plans. Step by step, struggle by struggle, Sundiata rose. He found the strength within himself, not only to walk but to lead. He united the fractured clans of Mali, defeated rival kings, and proved that true strength comes not from the body, but from courage and vision. When he became king, he did not stop at war. Sundiata understood something greater. Trade was power. He took Mali's wealth, gold from the south, salt from the desert, and turned the empire into the beating heart of Africa's trade. From the burning sands of the Sahara to the Atlantic coast, caravans moved under his command. But perhaps his greatest legacy was not gold or conquest. It was governance. Sundiata built systems that held Mali together for centuries, creating stability where chaos once ruled. He laid the foundation, the very pillars upon which Mansa Musa, the richest man in history, would later rise. And yet, in today's history books, his name is often just a footnote. The world remembers Mansa Musa, gold, but forgets the Lion King who made it all possible. The Empire of Mali, once glorious under Sundiata and Mansa Musa, was fading. But Africa never slept. As Mali's light dimmed, another flame was rising, brighter, fiercer, unstoppable. This was the Songhai Empire, and at its heart stood a warrior king whose very name struck fear, Sunni Ali Ber. He was not a king who ruled from the comfort of palaces. Sunni Ali lived on the battlefield. His life was war, conquest, and strategy. From the moment he took power, he marched with his armies, determined to carve a new empire out of the ashes of Mali. And he succeeded. Sunni Ali Ber transformed Songhai into the largest empire in the history of West Africa. His power stretched across deserts and rivers, from the golden markets to the fortified cities. But what made him unstoppable was not just his sword, it was his mastery of both land and water. With his navy sailing the Niger River and his cavalry thundering across the plains, he commanded armies that could strike from every direction. No kingdom was safe. No rival could match him. Under his reign, cities that had once been symbols of glory, Timbuktu and Jen, bent to his will. These were not just cities of stone. They were the beating hearts of African knowledge, gold, and trade. And now, they belonged to Songhai, Sunni Ali was not a mere conqueror. He was a builder of wealth. He didn't let his riches scatter into chaos. Instead, he organized them, channeling gold, salt, and trade goods into systems that fueled Songhai's rise. Markets thrived, scholars found patronage, merchants grew powerful. His empire became a machine of prosperity. And here lies the truth. History often buries, while Europe was crawling out of the Middle Ages, broken and struggling to rebuild after centuries of darkness. Sunni Ali Ber ruled an empire that connected Africa with Arabia and beyond. His power wasn't hidden, it was dominant. His wealth wasn't luck, it was strategy. Songhai under Sunni Ali wasn't just surviving. It was a powerhouse, a civilization so vast and so wealthy that it rivaled the greatest empires of its time. Yet today, in most history books, his story is barely whispered. But the truth remains. Without Sunni Ali Ber, Songhai would never have risen to such heights. He was the conqueror who reshaped West Africa, the lion who stood over trade, wealth, and power when the rest of the world was still struggling to wake. When the conqueror Sunni Ali Ber passed, many believed the Songhai Empire would lose its fire. But instead, it found a new kind of greatness. Not through war this time, but through wisdom. That greatness came in the form of Askia Muhammad I. Remembered as the Scholar King, Askia Muhammad was not just a ruler of lands. He was a ruler of minds. He looked at Songhai and saw more than soldiers and markets. He saw the potential to create a civilization where wealth was not only measured in gold, but in knowledge. He reorganized trade so that caravans flowed more smoothly than ever before. He reformed taxation, making sure wealth was steady and fair. Gold and salt continued to pour into the empire. But Askia understood something few kings of his age could grasp. True wealth comes from vision, so he turned his eyes to Timbuktu. Under his reign, Timbuktu became the greatest university city in the world. Its libraries swelled with thousands upon thousands of manuscripts, works on astronomy, medicine, philosophy, mathematics, and science. Scholars from across Africa and Arabia gathered there, debating ideas that Europe would not rediscover for centuries. Imagine this. While much of Europe was still emerging from ignorance, stumbling in the shadows of the Middle Ages, Askia Muhammad was building an empire where knowledge was currency, where a book could be as valuable as a bar of gold. He proved that a king could be more than a conqueror. He could be a guardian of wisdom, a patron of scholars, a builder of civilization, and yet, open most textbooks today, and his name is absent, a ghost in history. The world remembers European kings who fought wars, but forgets the African king who built a world of learning. But his legacy remains. Askia Muhammad, the scholar king, the man who showed that the pen can be as mighty as the sword, and that knowledge is the truest form of power. Far away from the deserts of Mali and the rivers of Songhai, deep inside West Africa's lush forests, another empire was rising, the Benin Empire. And at its peak stood a ruler remembered as one of the greatest of his age, Oba Ewuare, the Great Dot. It was the 15th century. While Europe was still fighting wars of kingdoms, Oba Ewuare was transforming Benin City into a marvel of the world. Imagine this city, broad avenues stretching out like veins of power, towering stone walls and moats protecting its people, markets overflowing with ivory, palm oil, pepper, and goods from faraway lands. Benin City was alive, organized, wealthy, and thriving, but its greatest symbol of wealth wasn't gold or salt. It was art. Oba Ewuare filled his royal palace with masterpieces, known today as the Benin Bronzes. Thousands of intricate plaques and sculptures, cast in bronze and ivory, told the story of dynasties, battles, spiritual beliefs, and triumphs. These were not just decorations, they were the empire's living memory, each piece carrying the soul of Benin. When Europeans first set eyes on these works, they were stunned. The craftsmanship was so advanced, so breathtaking that it shattered their myth of Africa as primitive. But instead of celebrating it, they feared it. Centuries later, when British forces invaded Benin, they burned the city to the ground, looted its treasures, and shipped the bronzes to Europe, where many still sit in museums today. And yet, the story of Oba Ewuare cannot be erased. His reign remains a shining proof that Africa's wealth was not only in material riches, but in culture, innovation, and artistry that rivaled, and often surpassed, the rest of the world. Oba Ewuare's Benin was more than an empire. It was a civilization of brilliance, a golden age carved in bronze. Travel east to the Lake Chad region, and you'll find the powerful Kanem-Bornu Empire. For centuries, its kings controlled trade across the Sahara: gold, salt, slaves, horses, ivory. One king in particular, Mai Idris Aluma, ruled in the 16th century and transformed the empire. He introduced gunpowder weapons, built roads, and strengthened markets. But his true genius, he placed Kanem-Bornu at the heart of international trade. From North Africa to the Middle East, caravans carried goods under his protection, filling his empire with riches. His rule shows us that Africa's wealth was not limited to the West. It stretched deep into the Sahara and beyond. In southern Africa, the Shona people built one of the most mysterious civilizations, Great Zimbabwe. Its kings ruled a kingdom built on gold and ivory trade. The massive stone walls of Great Zimbabwe, some still standing today, were centers of royal power. From here, trade reached as far as China and Persia. Chinese porcelain and Arabian coins have been found in the ruins, proving that these kings were plugged into a global economy long before colonizers arrived. European colonizers later spread lies, claiming Africans could not have built such structures. But archaeology proved them wrong. It was the Shona kings who ruled here, with wealth flowing through their cities of stone and gold. Mansa Musa was not alone. Sundiata Keita, Sunni Ali Ber, Askia Muhammad, Oba Ewuare. They were giants of Africa's story, but the truth is even greater. Across the continent, there were many more rulers of unimaginable wealth and power. Rulers the world has almost completely erased. Long before Mali or Songhai rose, there was the Empire of Ghana. From the 8th to the 11th century, Ghana's kings became the first to control the lifeblood of West Africa: gold. Caravans of merchants crossed the Sahara, and every ounce of gold passed through their hands. They built the foundations of the wealth that later empires would inherit. Farther south, in the rainforests and river valleys, rose the Kingdom of Congo. Its rulers commanded trade in ivory and copper, resources so prized they traveled across the Atlantic world. The Congo kings were not isolated, they were connected, their power stretching through networks of commerce and diplomacy. And in the east, the highlands of Ethiopia were ruled by the Zago and Solomonic dynasties. Their power was more than material, it was spiritual. They built churches out of solid rock, monuments that still stand today. Their wealth was measured not only in land and trade, but in the sacred, a fusion of spiritual and earthly authority. Go even farther back in time, to the banks of the Nile, and you find the pharaohs of Nubia, the Kushite dynasty. These were the Black Kings who once ruled over Egypt itself. Their wealth and power are still etched into the desert stone pyramids, massive temples, and monuments that declare their greatness to the sky. Each of these rulers, from Ghana to Congo, from Ethiopia to Nubia, proves one undeniable truth. Africa's wealth was never about one man. It was never about just Mansa Musa. It was a continent of kings, empires, and civilizations, vast, diverse, and powerful, whose riches flowed not from luck, but from mastery of trade, governance, culture, and vision. So why is it that in most textbooks, when we hear about Africa's wealth, only Mansa Musa is mentioned? Because colonial powers needed a single exception, a story they could not deny, but one they could isolate. If they admitted there were many kings, many empires, many centers of wealth, the world would see Africa for what it truly was, a cradle of power, prosperity, and global influence. By reducing Africa to poverty and darkness, colonizers justified their own greed. By silencing these kings, they silenced a continent's pride. And now you know, Africa's story of wealth was never about just one king. It was about a continent overflowing with power, trade, knowledge, and brilliance. From the Lion King, Sundiata Keita, to the Scholar King, Askia Muhammad, from the warrior Sunni Ali Ber, to the golden Oba Ewuare, Africa was never silent, it was silenced. But today, we break that silence, because when you learn these stories, you take back what colonizers tried to erase. You reclaim a history of pride, of strength, of greatness, and this is only the beginning. There are hundreds more stories waiting to be told. If this journey opened your eyes, then don't stop here. Like this video to let the world know Africa's truth matters. Comment your thoughts. Tell us which forgotten king inspired you the most. Share this video so more people can wake up to Africa's hidden legacy. And most importantly, subscribe to Africa Untold. And join us as we uncover the stories the world tried to erase. Because Africa's past is not gone. It lives in us. It lives in you. And together, we will make sure it is never forgotten again.